everybody, Nancy Beauvert here with Agapi Marketing and Consulting, and we are continuing our interviews with experts series here, and I am happy to have with me today Dr. Vincenzo Aliberti. I met Vincenzo last November. I was introduced to him through a third party who he used to be associated with, and I'm really honored to have made his acquaintance, and he brings so much to the table, and he's just an all-around good guy. I would like to point out that Vincenzo is a doctor. He has a PhD from Western University, specializing in mergers and acquisitions and foreign direct investment. And he's also an accomplished author. He's written 3 books, one on Canadian mergers and acquisitions, and 2 in the personal development genre, one called Achieving Your Greatness, and another one entitled The 4 Truths. Vincenzo has over 20 years of experience in marketing, sales, and business transformation consultation, and I'm happy to call him my friend, and I'd like to welcome you.
Well, thank you very much, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
And I'm just going to say right now as well, I'm going to get the elephant in the room on the table. When I first met this gentleman, I was introduced to him as Vince, and I have since decided that I'm going to start calling him Vincenzo because it's so much larger than life. So if I slip here and call him Vince, please forgive me, but I'm working on calling you Vincenzo. So welcome very much to our program. I'm happy to have you here to share your knowledge and expertise with my audience. And the reason why we've brought Vince in today, there we go, is to talk about the importance of strategy and execution. I've always been a person as a marketer who believes that you cannot effectively market without a proper strategy in place. So when Vincenzo approached me and said that he would be willing to speak to all of us here and help share his experience and guidance in the areas of strategy and execution, I was thrilled. So what we're going to talk about today and the areas we're going to touch on is strategy and execution and what they mean, how your organizational culture plays into those elements, how downsizing can affect strategy and execution, and we're going to just touch on the current status of things here in Alberta, the business and economy in Alberta. So welcome, Vincenzo, and do you have anything that you'd like to say before we jump right in?
Oh, first of all, thank you very much for having me, Nancy. And strategy and execution it's what I've been passionate about for the last 20 years, and I'm really looking forward to providing some answers to these questions, at least my answer from my vantage point.
Perfect. So let's just jump right in there. Strategy and execution. When somebody uses those words, what comes to mind?
The very first thing that comes to mind is that in most organizations they don't align. If you look at, actually there was an article published in the Harvard Business Review by and I believe the authors work for the strategy arm, it's called strategy arm of PwC. After surveying 700 executives and they asked them simply 2 questions. Can you effectively execute well? Can you effectively develop strategy well? They tallied all the data. And Nancy, I'm going to ask you this. What percentage of executives do you believe said that they effectively developed strategy well and effectively executed on that strategy well, roughly?
I am going to guess that a larger percentage thought that they had developed it than executed it, and I would guess that probably in the high 90s on on the development and the high 70s in the execution.
And how many do you believe that actually did both extremely well?
In reality, in
Yeah.
real life, 40%.
8%.
Holy smokes, I was giving way too much credit.
So 8%, and again, even if they're off by 100%, even you're looking at 16% potentially of leaders are excellent at they're very effective at executing strategy as well as developing strategy. Now that says a great deal regarding the marketplace. Now I'm not blaming leaders. No, this is more about trying to understand the mentality of leaders. It's also how they could really harness or better find people on their teams that can tend to their shortcomings, so to speak. So if they're very good strategists, get someone on board to be better at executing and vice versa. But
Right.
given that we know that, and given that there's a tremendous amount of pressure on individuals to get results in organizations, when people are trying to be efficient within an organization, be effective within that organization, make that organization run like a well-oiled machine, fundamentally, even though they're making that attempt, if they're not aligned with the strategy, given that the executives are having a hard time developing and executing strategy, how does that work? For the most,
Exactly.
for the most part, it simply doesn't work, and that's the reason why I believe corporations don't get the return or the value for the assets they invest, whether they're financial assets or capital assets, human capital assets. It's quite disturbing because there's so much literature written on strategy. There's so much literature written on operational efficiency and execution. But the fact of the matter is that we simply are not focusing on the right things. That's what I truly believe. I think that what's happening is that there is a way that an organization goes about doing things, right? And it gets a specific, and it gets the job done, like a Band-Aid.
Right.
But I think the way it needs to go forward in order to effectively develop a strategy and execute on that strategy is to have almost like a value management system, a system that says, okay, given our strategy and given how we need to execute, it's important to do the right thing. What is that question that will enable you to do the right thing, get that outcome, and the benefits from that outcome? Secondly, look at doing things the right way. Out of all the possible scenarios, not the way you've always done it, but given your resources, what is the best possible way to execute on the right thing? Next, how do you get it done? The implementation piece is the execution piece. How do you simply get it done? Is it the same way as you had it done previously, or no? And then once it's done, are you getting the results that you look for in that outcome? And even more importantly, what benefits from those results are you getting? Will it take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now to realize those benefits? Or will you instantaneously realize those benefits? And it's aligning that gap, doing the right thing the right way to get things done and to get benefits realized for those results. And doing that alignment between strategy and execution that will minimize that gap and really make organizations more sustainable for growth.
In your experience, where do you think that gap lies? Like you say, not to throw leaders under the bus, because leaders have the mantle of the whole business on their shoulders. Strong leaders know their strengths and their weaknesses and will surround themselves with people, hopefully, who are experts in their area who can carry things forward and help with the execution part. Do you think that the missing piece is that perhaps it's a trickle-down thing, that some of the cogs in the wheel, if you will, the people that are under the leadership to do the execution, to come up with that, are they perhaps not as effective as they claim to be, or as that they should be, or is it in the measurement of the execution, or is it not being clear on what the goals are with the strategy? In your experience, what would you say would be the biggest downfall then?
A couple of things. It's a matter of the culture of the organization and how things are communicated, how well things are communicated and cascaded throughout the organization.
Well, that leads us right into that whole idea of organizational culture then. Maybe you could expand on that and how that has,
Sure.
how it can be so
Sure.
impactful.
And it's interesting, in 1986 I had the good fortune of getting a soccer scholarship at Oakland University. And for preseason and the first 8 games of that season, we were horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. But at 13 games, fast forward 13 games, and we ended up going to the NCAA National Championships. Culture. Every organization, before you even develop a strategy on, okay, this is where you are and this is where you want to go, you need to have that sound culture. And it has to be communicated throughout the organization that what you stand for. See, your culture is your identity. It is more than you as an individual. It's about the collective. So on our soccer team, it was our shirt. What we were playing for was our shirt. OU, Oakland University, the fans, the university, it was much larger than us. So in the same sense, with an organization, it's not about the individual, it's about the collective, it's about that identity, because it is that identity that will enable an organization to really stand out in comparison to their competition. It is that identity that will enable them, that collective identity that will enable them to really take care of the system of capabilities, to hone the system of capabilities so that you can develop the products and or services that add value to your clients. And it is your identity which is ultimately the promise that you give to your clients, your brand. Unless you have that, unless you have your identity, and you have people's, lack of a better word, buy-in, it's very difficult to execute on even the most wonderful strategy.
Right.
And it seems to me that over the years, whether you're looking at a simple team that's working on a project, a whole division, the whole entire organization, the one fundamental issue that I see is the lack of communication.
Yes.
Lack of communication and the ability to have that change management as you're trying to, this is your culture and how you're trying to evolve, cultivate your culture in helping people along deal with that change so that you can grow your organization. It's a challenge, notwithstanding the fact that you have outside external factors like market conditions, maybe heavy, very powerful competitors knocking on your door, on your customer's door. Economics that really take a toll on your bottom line, you name it, right? But internally, it's that identity that really can take you to that next level. And a lot of times.
And communication, I think must be the biggest
Yes.
key in making sure that this works, because I think it's true what they say, that you're only as strong as your weakest
Yes.
link. And if you do have people in your organization who have poor morale, have a bad attitude or whatever, now granted, occasionally you're going to get somebody that just is going to be like that, doesn't fit the
Absolutely.
organization. But in many, many cases, I'm sure it's because they don't understand, or they haven't been communicated to in a way that works for them, so that they understand what the overarching theme is. And yeah, you know what? Sometimes you have to kind of just weed somebody out, and it's
Yes.
not going to work. And communication is an easy word to say,
Absolutely.
but it's a very, very difficult
Yes.
deliverable.
Yes.
The word, at least the human language, or the English language, is a very, very difficult thing, and open to interpretation so much. And so many people are relying on electronic means of communication. I still believe that even in our technological age today, that you still can't eliminate personal human contact, getting on a telephone and speaking, because words are, and this is as a communicator, as a marketer, somebody who writes, words on a page can come to life, but they can also be completely devoid of any emotional attachment. And sometimes that leaves things open to interpretation that somebody might take
Yes.
offense to. So if you can pick it up and forget about the text message or the email, but actually pick up and say, you know what, did you kind of get the theme of where we were going with this? Or what were your thoughts about what
Yes.
that was? I don't think that you can ever get rid of the personal interaction.
The personal interaction is critical. After all,
Right.
we're human beings, and we all need, no matter how logical, rational anyone is, fundamentally at the core, we're emotional beings, and communication is integral to that.
Right. Right. Now, maybe what we can do is jump in here as well. You alluded to the market conditions and things like that can impact the corporate culture. How does downsizing have an effect on that, again, in your experience, Vincenzo?
I have a mergers and acquisitions background, and what's interesting is I currently live in Calgary, Alberta, and Alberta in general, although it's predominantly the energy sector, oil and gas, but there are some very powerful, there are some other sectors that are strong, like agriculture, forestry, tourism, but not to the same level as the energy sector. What I see happening going forward is a great deal of merger and acquisition activity. I've spoken to other individuals and they believe the same thing is going to happen. Now, with that merger and acquisition activity, what's going to happen is that, yes, two companies are going to join. Financially, it may work, but the fundamental fact is that over 60% of mergers fail. And if you go
Really?
easily 60%, and some sources say over 80, some sources say 70, some say more than half, but given my research, I'd say over 60% of mergers fail. Now, why do they fail? Is it because of a CEO's greed? Is it power? Is it the due diligence wasn't done up front? I don't believe it's that. I believe it's because the softer intangibles have been fully taken into account by the parties involved. So as you're trying to integrate the organizations, different technologies, that culture clashes. So no matter how sound your strategy is, because of that culture clash, and because you're not actually doing the proper due diligence with regard to change management, what happens is that things get lost in translation, and the efficiencies and the synergies, the efficiencies and the effectiveness that you would expect from an acquisition, a merger or acquisition, they simply don't come true. And as a result, what happens is that they fail. And there's been tons of studies. You go to Harvard Business Review, you could just use Google, whatever you want. And the fact of the matter is, people are still going to conduct these mergers, these acquisitions. But what boggles my mind is the inability of those parties involved not realizing how the intangibles, because they're not quantified, like the impact of culture on the true integration and sustainability of that organization, right?
Can I ask you a question on that point? Obviously, whenever there's a merger, there is, most times I would think, you got a duplication of positions in there. So inevitably, I would think that there are some layoffs that eventually will happen. So my belief, and I'm sure many people out there, think that there is a level of fear, distrust, unsettled behavior among the employees of certainly the company that is being taken over. Is that part of that soft culture that you're talking about that creates some of the difficulties, or would that be kind of after the fact that could create obstacles and things with the corporate culture moving forward?
Very good questions. Once the thought of a merger is embedded as a seed in someone's head, even before the actual merger takes place or the acquisition takes place, most individuals create an obstacle, they're based in fear, and they're concerned about their security, their job, their promotion, whatever it is, right? So automatically, most individuals revert to that fear-based mentality. And because of that fear-based mentality, and because, as you mentioned, potentially duplication of activities do exist, am I going to lose my job? Or is Mary going to lose her job? I have to make sure that they see that I'm valuable in this organization. It's tough. It's tough. And once the merger takes place or the acquisition takes place, fear is the very first thing that, especially if you've never gone through it before, it's the very first thing that comes to mind, because, again, security is critical. Everyone wants to have a good job. Everyone wants a secure position, right? And it's a challenge for the people that are trying to integrate the two firms, or two firms in one. Fear plays a major role, and unless it's communicated from the top that the changes are for the better and not for the worse, the culture will be tainted, and the efficiencies that you would expect to get from the acquisition or merger won't take place.
Now, you say that 60%, in your experience, 60% of the mergers and acquisitions will actually fail. So given that, does that poison the corporate culture to some degree of the failed merger as well? Is there a mistrust then among the employees? And can that poison and create some havoc in the corporate culture and the outcomes and the strategy and execution for the company as a whole?
I think the way I could best answer that question is by asking you this question. If an acquisition takes place, you're working in this company, an acquisition takes place, you've been working 10 years at this company, whatever that company's name is, and it takes place. Do you trust that the leaders are going to do right by you? You don't have to answer that question. Are they going to do right by the company? Yes. Are they going to do right by you? It depends on each individual, right? And depends on it depends on their level of awareness. It depends on their level depends on the level of understanding of the whole process. But trust is key. Trust is key.
Now, what about in those failed mergers, though? Like your company was going to merge with mine and it didn't happen. So now are your employees less trustful that you won't do it again, that you're not looking for the next white knight or whatever? Is there a level of mistrust among, or would you say that, again, we come back to the issue of communication, and it depends on how the leadership handles the message to their people?
That is critical. That is critical because if a merger did not take place, or if your company did not acquire my company, if the communication comes across as this was in the best interest of our organization, that we do not acquire that organization because we saw some instability that could have resulted, and I don't have the best communication plan, so to speak, on how to do it. I'm just mentioning something off the top of my head. But the key is how it's communicated and monitoring the responses of the individuals that are being communicated to. Now, I'm not saying have your thumb on top of the employees. It's just make sure you have a pulse on the culture of the organization, so that you know exactly, especially if you need to execute on certain strategies, you know exactly how your culture, how your organization is going to respond given your current climate, right? It's a tough question to answer, but it goes back to communication.
Yeah. So, being a marketer, and that's my core, and I know that you have great experience in that as well, but kind of bringing it back to, my company and doing marketing services, I try to deliver that as a core message, core takeaway for the people who are tuning in here. The successes or failures of many corporate marketing plans then kind of falls in line with my old tired song that I keep singing to everybody, that you do have to start with a strategy, that you can't just randomly go out there and decide that this week we're going to put out a brochure, or I think we'll do a little commercial here or whatever, that there does have to be a strategy put into place with a clear goal at the end, and then the steps to execute it. So let's get back, just if we could then, to the strategy and execution portion of your expertise. So what would be your biggest recommendation to any owner of any business, large or small, then, on maybe the steps that they need to take, what they need to look at in order to be effective?
The very first thing is ask yourself, as the owner, am I asking the right question? And based on that question, am I going to get the outcome that I want? So that's the very first thing, because that will enable you to focus on the right thing. Unless you have that clarity in your head, pure clarity in your head, what's going to happen is you'll be swaying back and forth. So clarity is first and foremost. And on top of that, if you do reach your outcome, and let's say you execute everything perfectly, a result for the sake of having a result is useless. What benefits are you going to realize from the outcome, the result that you will get? So asking the right question, framing it correctly, determining the outcome or the result you want so you can do the right thing, and ultimately what benefits are going to be realized for your organization as a result. of that outcome or result. I believe that the how someone else can help you out with, but if you're also good at how to execute, then you could do it yourself. Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they're hands-on, right?
Yes. Almost afraid to bring anybody else
Yeah,
in.
it's unfortunate because the strategy component is most critical. And what happens is that as an entrepreneur, you believe you know how to do the accounting and the finance and the marketing and this, that, and the other thing. When the fact of the matter is, you're a master of none. You may just know
Yeah.
maybe plumbing. You may know, you may be a great electrician. You may be a great marketer, but rarely have I found someone who can do it all. There's only so many hours in a day, right? It's about having that team around you so that when you ask the right question, you know what levers to pull and execute to get the result and the benefits from those results. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, good points there. I appreciate all those, and of course the fact that communication, open communication, clear communication are so critical in making sure that the obstacles are seen and can be overcome when they do present themselves, because inevitably there will be obstacles.
Without question. And what you're doing with your organization regarding crafting, getting clients clear, helping them craft that message, which is critical, so that they can get, they do the right thing, is paramount for client success. Without it, what happens is that they'll keep on doing what they've always done and keep on getting the same old results. You know the song. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I see that our time is starting to come to an end here. So, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
The only final thought is that aligning strategy and being able to execute on that strategy is extremely difficult. Leaders have a tough job. People within organizations have a tough job. There are a lot of external parameters that need to be considered. So it's not doom and gloom, but what I would say is start with the culture. Make sure that everyone's on board. Because by having that culture, what happens is that everyone's in sync. And it's just like a lock at the gym, right? When everyone's in sync, you have the right combination in place, you'll be able to open the lock. Same thing in an organization. You have everything working in sync, you'll be able to better execute on your strategy accordingly. So, final thoughts, get a lock and get in sync.
Perfect analogy. All right, well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Vincenzo Aliberti. And for our audience here, please tell us how they can find
Simply,
you.
you can give me a call directly at 403-700-3399. That's 403-700-3399. Or alternatively, feel free to email me at vince.aliberti, ALIBERTI, at veriscanada.com. That's VERIS Canada.com. This has been a wonderful experience, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I can't thank you enough. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. You do as well. Bye for now.